All right, everybody. Welcome to Coffee with a Killer. My name is Jordan. If this is your first time joining the call, glad to have you. I'm the founder of a company called Black Gold Trading. And this specific call, what I do is I share a bit of information of what I've learned as a business owner over the past decade. So if you guys are tuning in live, go ahead and say hey in the chat. I should be able to see your comments and all of that. I titled this one, What I Think About Debt. And it might not be what you think. Debt is for a lot of people, it's a bad word. It is something to be cautious about. It's something that you got to be really careful with. It's scary. What if this? What if that? What if I can't pay? There's a lot of weird misconceptions when it comes to debt. So I want to just go through how I view it, how I use it, the whole thing. What's up, Rob? Good to see you. And Manifesto Gold. I love that name. The Amy Beth is on. What's up, Amy? Or Amy Beth, sorry. We got Catherine on. Good to see you guys. So first and foremost, I got a couple notes over here. You got to understand that there's good debt and bad debt. Not all debt is equal. Not all debt is measured or weighed the same. How I look at debt from this specific standpoint is, does it buy me cash flow? Does it put money in my pocket? Obviously, bad debt takes money away from you. So a lot of people think like their house is an asset. That's good, right? That's good debt. Not necessarily. It could be. And there's ways to potentially make it good debt. But for most people, their house is bad debt. It just costs them every money every month. Okay. So you've got to look at this as, is this buying me cash flow? Okay. First and foremost, that's a massive difference in perspective. It has to be giving you money. It has to be putting money in your pocket monthly. Okay. The second thing, and we talked about this just briefly, is like debt can buy a lot of freedom. I remember in the very beginning when I started my journey, I was just terrified of debt. I remember I borrowed like $250,000 from a private lender. And I was like, oh my gosh, what if this doesn't work out? What if I mess up? I don't have $250,000. That's why I borrowed $250,000. So, the lender is in an elevated position and I'm in this lower position. There was a lot of really weird things that were happening in my mind. But that was the beginning part of, I got financially free. I borrowed some money. I bought some real estate, etc. You got to keep in mind with a lot of this lending and borrowing and debt in general, you got to understand that the lender, they are in a worse position because they have to lend and you don't have to borrow. They don't make money unless they're giving you money. Does this make sense? They need you. They need people like you. They need people. In the very beginning, I was doing real estate. They needed people with good real estate projects because that money that was just sitting there was not good for them. Does that make sense? So once I realized that, man, these guys really needed me, it kind of changed my perspective a little bit. The third thing, and this is really, really important, this is very key. When I look at the debt on my books, we'll call it books. When I look at the debt on my books, let's say that I get $10,000 in my account. Should I pay off that debt? Who can tell me in the chat? Should I pay off that debt? This one thought process that I'm about to walk you through changed everything for me financially. Should I pay off the debt? Let's say I get $10,000 in my account, and let's say I've got a $10,000 line of credit or a $10,000 credit card bill or whatever it might be. Should I pay that off? Anybody know? It depends. How I look at this is What happens to my cash flow if I pay that off? So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that I have an $800 payment. It's my monthly obligation for that $10,000 debt. If I pay that off, what am I gaining? I'm gaining $800 in cash flow, correct? It's costing me $800 a month. I have cash. If I pay off that debt, when I look at like my income versus my expenses, and you guys know on the dashboard how we calculate getting free is your passive income surpasses your expenses. If I take $10,000 and I pay that off, that scale is going to tip $800 in my favor. Or would I make more money investing the 10K? That's my mindset. If I pay it off, I get my cash flow increases by 800. Can I do better than that if I take this 10K and invest it elsewhere? Can I put this 10K into something that give me more than 800? Because if that's the case, this is the better option. Does that make sense? So I'm looking at, with my 10K, what's the better option for me financially? Is it to pay off the thing and get 800? Or can I go invest it and do better than 800? I'm going to do which one's better. Make sense? Sometimes people pay off massive amounts of stuff. Let's just say it was only $200. They take 10K and they pay off a $200 a month expense when they could have taken that 10K and bought something that would have given them not only the 200 but another 600. You're making now a bad financial decision paying off the $200 thing. Is that making sense, guys? The Amy Beth said if it was credit card, I'd say yes. I still think it depends. I think it still depends on what that payment is. The other thing that I look at, guys, is I really look at the rate of debt. What's the rate of debt? Is it 2%? Is it 22%? What's the long-term effect of that 22% or that 2%? So these are things that go through my head when I'm making these decisions about debt. I love debt. Like I love it. I love the fact that I can literally borrow money and build out my entire dream. I can build out my businesses. I can build out my ideal lifestyle if I do it appropriately. I love it. At one point, my goal was to be $1 billion in debt. It's not anymore, but at one point, that's how I viewed it. That terrifies most people. So, rates are a big one. And a lot of this goes into if you guys go back, I think it was either 1 or 2 episodes ago on Coffee with a Killer, I talked about this whole idea that wealthy people use called buy, borrow, die. Anybody remember that? Buy, borrow, die. So this idea of debt rolls into that. Sometimes when we buy, we're using debt. When we borrow, we're using debt. It goes hand in hand. So the wealthiest people on the planet are utilizing this idea of I'm buying things that I can borrow against because the borrowing against is tax-free. Okay? Buy, borrow, buy, borrow, buy, borrow. And I just keep on doing that because it's a tax-free environment where I can get everything I want. When I die, the cycle continues. Makes sense? So do not jump into debt blindly. Do not make stupid decisions. I was talking to a guy the other day that was going to do this like super, super high interest loan. And he's like, oh yeah, but it's for a short period of time. And then like the terms of it being late were terrible. It was like 20+%. And what he was buying was not good debt. What he was looking at was not a positive cash flow thing. That's dangerous, man. That's how people go up. You know what I'm saying? Tits up. That's what happens. It's bad. You've got to look at this through the lens of who you want to become. So I'm going to end with this point here. Looking at this through the lens of who you want to become. If you want to become wealthy, you should be looking at death through the lens of wealthy people. How do wealthy people look at debt? How do wealthy people consider debt? How do wealthy people make their decisions when it comes to debt? So if that's who you want to be, you need to start looking at things through that lens and through that viewpoint. Okay? If you don't want to be broke, you need to not look at debt how broke people look at debt. Does that make sense? You always do what you've always done. Nothing changes, nothing changes. So you're not going to change your life if you continue to look at things through the lens of poverty or through how broke people or poor people, or you get what I'm saying right now, right? You've got to change your perspective. So I started looking at these ideas like buy, borrow, die, and how wealthy people utilize debt and what makes good debt good and what makes bad debt bad. I started looking at this and I started studying it for a while. Now I'm still learning, as I'm sure you guys are. There's no arrival point. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. Okay. Any questions, really quick? There's a delay, so I'll give it just a second. But are there any questions about debt? How do wealthy people view debt? A lot of you guys want to be wealthy, but you don't view debt how wealthy people view debt. So we have a conflict here. You're going to be button heads. I want this thing. I want this wealth, and I want generational wealth, and I want to leave a legacy and build a dynasty. But I just can't wrap my head around viewing debt how wealthy people view debt. Headbutt, man, you're going to be clashing. Any questions on debt? And if you guys jumped in late, I talked about good debt versus bad debt. I talked about debt buys freedom. I talked about should you pay it off or should you not pay it off? Should you pay off your bills or should you go buy more cash flow? I talked about how I define that and how I make that decision. I talked about interest rates. I talked about buy, borrow, die. Any questions here really quick? What's up, Paul? How are you, sir? All right. If you guys have questions later on, you can always post them here in this video. But if you guys are good, we'll keep on moving with our morning. Appreciate you guys. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Later on, leave a comment on the video. It helps the algorithm, all of that fun stuff. Much love, guys. We'll catch you on the flip side.